For nearly 5 years now, ever since Harry and Meghan first began distancing themselves from royal duties, there's been this ongoing conversation in the media about Harry's emotional well-being. The narrative has been remarkably consistent. Harry made a mistake. He's miserable in California. He misses his old life. And he's struggling to find his place in the world. But in his recent interview with The Guardian during his Ukraine visit, Harry addressed these claims head-on. And he didn't mince words. It is only in certain elements of the press where you see this talk about me being down or saying I am not smiling, he said. This comes from people who think they know what I am thinking and how I am feeling. They are wrong. Now, this is significant for several reasons. First, it's rare for Harry to directly address these kinds of personal narratives. Usually, when he speaks publicly, it's about his charitable work, mental health advocacy, or specific issues like media intrusion. But here he's explicitly calling out what he sees as misrepresentation. He went further, saying, "I think parts of the British press want to believe that I am miserable, but I'm not. I'm very happy with who I am, and I like the life that I live." The word choice here is interesting. He's not just saying he's content or getting by, he's saying he's very happy and that he likes his life. These are strong, positive statements that directly contradict the doom and gloom narrative we've seen in certain quarters of the media. But here's where we need to be careful about taking sides or making assumptions. Harry's statements are his truth, his perspective on his own life. At the same time, we can't ignore that there have been legitimate challenges and difficulties that he's faced since leaving royal duties. The question isn't whether these challenges exist. Harry himself acknowledges them, but rather how they've impacted his overall well-being and life satisfaction. What's particularly notable is Harry's acknowledgement of media motivation. He's essentially arguing that certain elements of the press have a vested interest in portraying him as miserable. Whether you agree with that assessment or not, it speaks to his awareness of how narratives are constructed and maintained in the media landscape. Now, while Harry is pushing back against the miserable prince narrative, he's not pretending that life has been easy. In fact, he was quite candid about the difficulties he's faced over the past few years. "I have certainly had to deal with some very stressful events over the last 4 years," he admitted. "There has been the uncertainty and stress of the litigation and finding out certain things that have really, really hurt." Let's break this down. The litigation he's referring to includes multiple ongoing legal battles, his phone hacking case against Mirror Group newspapers, his legal challenge over his security arrangements when visiting the UK, and various other media-related lawsuits. These aren't simple matters. They're complex, expensive, time-consuming legal processes that would be stressful for anyone. The phrase "finding out certain things that have really, really hurt" is more cryptic, but it likely refers to revelations that have emerged through these legal processes. We know that phone hacking cases often uncover the extent of media intrusion into private lives, which can be deeply unsettling to discover years after the fact. What's significant here is Harry's ability to hold two truths simultaneously. He can acknowledge that he's faced serious stress and hurt, while also maintaining that he's fundamentally happy with his life choices and current situation. This kind of nuanced thinking is often lost in media coverage, which tends to favour simpler, more dramatic narratives. It's also worth noting that Harry frames these challenges as things he's dealt with rather than things that are currently overwhelming him. There's a sense of resilience and movement forward in his language rather than being stuck in victimhood. The stress he mentions also extends beyond personal matters to his ongoing concerns about security and the legal battles surrounding his protection when he visits the UK. These aren't abstract worries, they have real implications for his ability to maintain relationships with family members and continue his charitable work in Britain. One of the most significant aspects of Harry's recent UK visit was his meeting with his father, King Charles III. This was their first face-to-face encounter since February 2024, meaning they went 19 months without seeing each other in person. The context makes this reunion particularly poignant. King Charles is currently undergoing treatment for cancer, a situation that naturally adds urgency to family relationships. Harry acknowledged this directly, saying, "The focus really has to be on my dad." According to reports, the meeting took place at Clarence House and lasted about an hour. Now, an hour might not seem like much, but in the context of their strained relationship and the King's busy schedule and health concerns, it represents a meaningful investment of time from both parties. What's interesting about Harry's approach to discussing this reunion is his focus on the future rather than dwelling on past grievances. He expressed hope that this meeting would make it easier for him to balance his life between the US and the UK. This suggests he's thinking practically about how to maintain family relationships while living across the ocean. The phrase, nurture the relationship, that he used, indicates an active, intentional approach to rebuilding their connection. This isn't about dramatic reconciliation or grand gestures. It's about the steady work of maintaining a father-son relationship under complicated circumstances. We should also consider what this meeting represents symbolically. For King Charles to make time for this visit, despite his health challenges and the ongoing tensions within the family, suggests that the paternal relationship remains important to him as well. The fact that it happened at Clarence House, rather than a more formal setting like Buckingham Palace, might indicate a more personal, less institutional approach to their interaction. Harry's comments suggest he sees this as a potential turning point, not necessarily for his broader relationship with the royal institution, but specifically for his personal relationship with his father. Given the King's health situation, there's an understandable sense of urgency around making the most of their time together. Despite living in California and stepping back from royal duties, Harry maintains that he still feels connected to the British people. "I feel a lot of support from the British public," he shared in the interview. This is a fascinating claim that's worth examining. Public polling on Harry's popularity in the UK has been mixed since he left royal duties, with significant variations depending on the source and timing of the polls. Some surveys show declining approval ratings, while others suggest more nuanced public opinion that distinguishes between Harry as an individual and his decisions regarding royal duties. What Harry might be referring to is the support he receives through his charitable work, particularly around mental health advocacy and his work with veterans. The Invictus Games, which he founded, continues to receive positive coverage and public support in the UK. His mental health initiatives have also resonated with many people who appreciate his openness about his own struggles. It's also possible that he's drawing on direct feedback he receives, letters, messages, encounters during his visits, rather than formal polling data. Personal interactions can provide a different perspective on public sentiment than what's reflected in newspaper headlines or social media debates. The distinction he's making seems to be between media narratives and public sentiment. He's suggesting that while certain elements of the press may portray him negatively, he believes the broader British public maintains a more supportive view of him personally. This connects to a broader theme in Harry's public statements: the difference between institutional or media perspectives and individual human connections. Throughout his charitable work and public appearances, he's consistently focused on person-to-person interactions rather than formal protocols or media management. So, what should we make of all this? Harry's recent statements represent perhaps his most direct pushback against the unhappy prince narrative that's dominated much of the coverage of his post-royal life. Several themes emerge from his comments. First, there's his insistence on defining his own experience rather than allowing media narratives to do so. This represents a continuation of his broader efforts to control his own story, which we've seen through his memoir, Spare, the Netflix documentary series, and various interviews over the years. Second, there's his demonstrated ability to compartmentalize, to acknowledge legitimate stresses and challenges, while maintaining that he's fundamentally satisfied with his life choices. This kind of emotional complexity is often lost in media coverage that prefers simple narratives. Third, there's his pragmatic approach to family relationships, particularly with his father. Rather than demanding dramatic changes or public apologies, he seems focused on finding workable ways to maintain important personal connections despite geographical distance and institutional tensions. Looking forward, these statements might signal a shift in how Harry approaches public communication about his post-royal life. Rather than focusing primarily on past grievances or institutional critiques, he appears to be emphasizing his current contentment and future plans. For the royal family, Harry's comments about prioritizing his relationship with King Charles might open doors for continued private dialogue, even if public reconciliation remains elusive. The King's health situation adds urgency to these family dynamics that goes beyond institutional politics. Ultimately, Harry's recent statements remind us that the real-life experiences of public figures are often more nuanced than the stories told about them. Whether you support his choices or not, his insistence on defining his own happiness challenges us to look beyond simple narratives of triumph or tragedy. The Sussex story continues to evolve, with new chapters being written in California, occasional visits to the UK, and ongoing efforts to balance public service with private life. As always, the truth likely lies somewhere between the extremes of media coverage. That's all for today's episode of Meghan and Harry Tales. I'm Adrian, and I'll see you next time as we continue to follow this fascinating modern royal story. Until then, take care.